hello, Canadian Campaholic here in a very swelteringly hot camper. It is the beginning of June now, and we're approaching our second trip of the camping season. And in the spirit of getting ready to go camping, I have a maintenance job that I need to do today. I actually need to install this, which is an RV propane gas alarm. Our current camper has one of these devices already in it. It was installed at the manufacturer, and it's actually a carbon monoxide / propane detector, but it is past its usable life, basically. Let me show you what we're talking about here. This is a combination carbon monoxide and propane detector. Shelf life on these, or usable life, I guess you could say, is approximately 5 years. So we are on borrowed time. A little while ago, this made a little bit of a chirping noise. And you got to read the manufacturer's instructions, but different alerts will mean different things. It wasn't an alert saying that there was a gas leak detected or a carbon monoxide issue. It was a chirp to warn you that it was approaching the end of its usable life. Some of them apparently will completely shut down, and they'll just continuously beep and flash at you to tell you they're no good. This one kind of gave us a little bit of a warning, so I think it's high time that we replace it. Now, there's various ones that you can get. This particular one, if you to buy a replacement right now, you're looking at probably between $100 and $150 Canadian, somewhere in that range. Which, when you think about it, it's well worth it. Carbon monoxide can be deadly, and propane as well. You get a propane leak in here, and that could be dangerous as well. If you think about modern campers, there's a lot of different things that run off of propane, anything from your furnace to your fridge. You could be using your stove. If you develop a leak and that propane pools in the rig and there's a spark, that could be catastrophic. And occasionally in the news you will hear situations where a camper blew up like a bomb, and I'm sure sadly there have been some fatalities. So you don't ever want to cheap out or cut corners when it comes to safety. Now, I personally didn't really want to spend over $100 for a combination unit, although you can't really put a price on safety. So what I've opted to do is I picked up one of these battery-powered carbon monoxide detectors. And this one, we just throw some batteries in it and put it in a suitable location, follow the manufacturer's instructions, and that'll take care of the carbon monoxide side of the business, so to speak. But we still need to look after propane. Sorry for the crappy camera work. Once again, I've lost my selfie stick. So I invested in it's RV Safe is the brand, and this is a propane gas alarm. It's an RV gas alarm. Now, there are others on the market. You can pick up different propane and carbon monoxide detectors on Amazon. I'm no industry expert, but I would say exercise caution there. I've noticed lately that a lot of the stuff, at least what we get here in Canada anyway on Amazon, the quality of it in recent years has really declined. We are getting products that are coming from other parts of the globe. I won't say where, but they're usually cheap garbage. And do you really want to put your trust and faith in something from another part of the world that might not even work? Safety Alert and RV Safe, these are two U.S. brands, I believe they are. Assembled in the USA, and they are industry standard. A lot of brands will have come with these equipped in the rig. So I decided to do that. This particular one, I think it was about $80 Canadian, including shipping. So I'm confident that between this as a functioning RV alarm and then the white carbon monoxide alarm will take care of all of our needs. All right, so before we get too committed to this, I'm going to take a look at the old one here and see what we're up against. So I believe, based on what I've seen before, it should just pivot, and it just lifts off, and there's the mounting bracket. And then we've got our red wire and our black wire running into the wall cavity. I'm just going to very gently fish this through so I can see what we're dealing with here. And it looks like just a couple of Moret caps. I don't know how much slack they've given me, but I'm going to, at this point, disconnect the 12-volt supply because I want to very carefully get in there and try to, sorry folks, you probably can't even see that, but there's a couple of Moret caps in there connecting the wires together, and that's going to have to come out of the opening so that I can secure the new wires from the new detector. And I will also have to put the new backing plate on. So again, safety first. I'm going to go outside, disconnect the 12-volt, and then we'll proceed further. All right, so I brought a lantern in here to kind of light the scene a little bit. So I was having some issues getting the wiring to come through with this face plate or back plate in the way. So this was just a couple of little Robinson head screws that were mounting that to the wall. So I've just removed those and pulled those through. The hole that they put in at the manufacturer in this particle board in Luan, you could barely fit the Moret caps through there. Now, I'm not an electrician or an expert, but I know that this is a type of Moret cap where there's almost like a metal tube in here that you crush. I'll have to go look up what the proper terminology is for this. It looks like they've got two red wires spliced together in the cap along with the red wire going to our detector. And then they got a couple of white wires spliced together going in with the black wire going into the connector. So I need to hit up a hardware store because it's probably a good idea to use new Morets. Probably don't want to reuse these. So I will change those out. So we're going to put a pause in the work until we can get the proper hardware to continue on with the installation. All right, so got my trusty needle nose pliers here. I'm going to very gently pinch these connectors where they crimp in the end, and that way we can release the wires and then run up to the hardware store to make sure I get the right kind of connector here. So can't really hold the camera and do that, so I don't think you need to visually see it, but that's the next step. All right, so you rejoin the action. I've got back from the hardware store, and I've got my little pack of closed-end connectors. So we now know what the proper name is because I was saying it wrong earlier. Something else to note with these replacements is they come with various backers. So depending on where you're installing it, how much you need to cover up in terms of, the wires, is the wall marred behind the old one. They got various backers. Obviously you can see that one's way too big. There's one that's a little bit smaller, but we really don't need any of these. If I take a look at the new detector and I put it close to the installation, helps if you have the camera in the right damn place. Don't have my videographer today. This isn't going too well, but I should be able to mount that pretty easily. It's very thin, like I said, fiberboard or MDF with some Luan on it, so it shouldn't be too difficult. But that'll mount nice and flush, and it should work just fine. So I'm going to, I can't really film me putting the connectors together, but I'm basically going to put the two red wires together, the two white wires together, give them a little bit of a twist. These have been, the insulation's been trimmed on these already. Sorry, it's not focusing. So I'll pull that off, twist them together, put them up in the closed end connector, and then use my trusty needle nose pliers to crimp that. Again, making sure that we give it a little bit of a tug so we can be sure the wires won't come out and come loose, because once this thing is shoved back in the wall and the trailer's bouncing down the road, you don't want any of those connections to become loose. So I have worked with these connectors before, and they're a little bit of a pain. The issue I was running into, see if I can get this thing to focus, was that once I got everything crimped, squeezed it for all my life was worth, and then as soon as I would pull on the little black wire there, it would literally just come right out. So the main wires from the trailer, which are very different gauge, were clamped in there nicely, but the little black wire going into the RV propane detector was coming loose. So what I did was I took, I had to uncrimp it, pull it apart, use another connector, but basically what I did the second time around was try to twist the little wire from the detector to one of the two wires, then twist the second of the larger wires onto it to kind of create a little bit of a sandwich, if you will, a little bit of a bundle, so that ultimately the wire coming off of the detector was part of that twirled up braided wire. And then that way, when I put it into the closed-end connector and crimped it, it's now nice and tight. So again, you may have some tips and hints on how to make this easier.
But yeah, definitely do not want that wire just pulling out once I start fishing everything back into the wall.
All right, so a little more faffing around, as the Brits would say, and we've got both connectors secured. Now, before I tuck all the wires back in and mount this sucker, we're going to do a test. So in a moment, I'll go and hook up the battery. So we have 12-volt supply, and we're just going to take a look at the different states here. Warm-up state. Green LED will flash for the first 3 minutes after power up to indicate the alarm is a warm-up state. It will not detect CO or propane, which in this case is only for propane, for the next 3 minutes. Normal operation state. Green power LED is on. No propane gas is present. Press the silence test button to perform a self-test and enter the test state. So maybe that's what we'll do. Just being careful not to jar the wires. Self-test state. If the silence test button is pressed while in normal operation, the alarm will perform a self-test. Self-test weekly and before each trip. Okay, cool. All right, so let's head outside and hook up the power and see what we get. Okay, so we've got power on now. The green LED is flashing, so that's a good sign. So it's supposed to flash for the first 3 minutes to indicate it's in a warm-up state. So that's good. So we'll let that finish blinking for 3 minutes, and then we'll do a self-test. All right, so it's been 3 minutes. The green LED has stopped blinking, so let's do a self-test. Again, I'm going to be careful here that I don't jar the wires too much. There's the self-test button. Perfect. I am now deaf, and I can confirm that it is working perfectly. So next step will be to probably disconnect the 12-volt supply while I monkey around and fish these wires back in and screw it to the wall, and then we'll be all set. We'll know that between this and the CO detector, we'll be able to go camping this weekend and be much safer. All right, all installed. The wiring wraps around the back of the detector to keep it flush, and then I was able to use the existing screw hole on the left to secure the unit, and then added the extra screw on the right. Little tip I'll give you, especially if you are screwing into just thin interior walls on your camper, is to appreciate that press board, which is underneath the luau, is probably less than a 1/4 inch thick. In fact, it may be even 1/8 of an inch thick. So don't go wrenching on those screws. You want just a little bit of resistance as you're screwing it into the wall. You want to make sure that the detector is flush against the wall and there's no wires hanging out, no gaps. And you want to make sure that it doesn't move. I would say every now and then after a trip, just see how it's doing. Make sure it's not shaking loose out of the wall. But if you over crank those screws, you're just literally going to just pull a hole in the wall and then you'll have nothing to attach to. If you were able to screw this into a stud on one or the other side, then yeah, you probably could go a little tighter, but then you don't want to run the risk of cracking the case. So secure but not Hercules, I guess, is the key here. So anyway, folks, that'll do it for this video. I'm just going to throw the instruction manual. Actually, I'll keep the instruction manual in the trailer in case we have any issues. I will hold on to the old unit just for now, even though it's past its shelf life. I'm always a little worried that something might go wrong with the new one. I'll keep the box. So I'm just going to find a suitable spot here in my shop to store that. But anyway, that'll end this particular video. Again, apologies for the crappy camera work, but my son was busy today and probably didn't want to help me shoot this. We'll be heading out for our second trip of the season soon at our favorite campsite again. And we've even secured a campsite for Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving this year, which is in October. Canadian Thanksgiving has become the last major holiday/camping weekend in Canada, which is really interesting because when we started camping, oh God, over 10 years ago, with the family anyway, with my family, nobody really camped past much the end of September. There wasn't really much in the way of Thanksgiving camping, but now it's become one of the most popular weekends. Didn't get an ideal site necessarily. We will be heading up to Pinery for that one because pretty much everywhere else is closed or full. But yeah, that'll be an interesting experience, a Thanksgiving camping trip. But between now and then, we've got a trip in June, we've got a trip in July, trip in August. We'll take a break in September because the kids will be back at school and getting situated, and then we'll do the October trip, and maybe, fingers crossed, we'll do a November trip. But as always happens in these videos, I am now rambling, so we're going to wrap things up. If this is your first time coming to the channel, please give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell button so that when we do update new stuff, you're notified right away. If you got any tips and hints on today's work and anything that could have made it easier, pop them down below. Happy camping. We'll talk to you later.